Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Anna Gogo. I'm the founder of Black Pod Collective, which is a digital community for Black audio creatives, and Black Pod Festival, which is our annual conference for Black creatives. I'm super excited because we've partnered with the Podcast Academy on our monthly workshops. And this has been a great series because I found myself being like, okay, hold on, wait, let me go back and watch this over, make sure I fully understand. So super excited to have everybody here. Let's just go over a few preliminary for those who may not be familiar with the organization or this style of workshop. So you'll notice that there's a chat function and then there's also a Q&A. So if you look at your screen, you should see a chat, but you should also see a Q&A. Please try to make sure you place all questions in the Q&A. Chats can be really for conversational things. So if you see something that's cool, if you resonate with something, by all means, place that in the chat because we want this to be as interactive as virtually can possibly be. Place your IG handles in the chat as well. I'm very big on let's connect with each other. If you're not big on IG, feel free to throw your Twitter or whatever social platform that you're on so that this way we can all connect with each other, support each other after this workshop. At the end of it, there'll be a survey that's placed in the chat. Please, please, please take the time to fill it out. I know we don't typically like to do those type of things, but it's actually very beneficial for us so we can continue to offer these type of services. And then lastly, the questions will be addressed at the end. So if there's something that's super pressing at the moment, I'm sure Tom or Greg will take the time to kind of like see what they can address in the moment. But please do be patient because of the fact that there's a lot of information that we're going to be going over today around LogicPro. So for those who are Apple users, this is a really great tool. I used it back in like 2019. It has a lot more bells and whistles than I could figure out. So I'm super excited for this. For those who are not familiar with Black Pod Collective, we're a digital community. We offer everything from accountability and support. This means like if we notice that you haven't posted an episode in some time, somebody from team will reach out to say, hey, is everything okay over there? We offer different things for increased visibility, access to resources, as well as funding with some of our different partners. We also do a few things across members. We have a little bit over 500 members throughout the globe. So where members are able to support each other on each other's podcasts, be guests, and everything else in between. I'm speaking as quickly as possible because I don't want to take up too much time. And some of the perks of our membership is discounts, access to check-ins, as well as different resources with different studios throughout Atlanta, as well as throughout like New York and bigger cities. So I'm going to kick it over to Michelle, who is here from the Podcast Academy. And I know I talk really fast, so if you have any questions for me, feel free to throw it in the chat. Michelle, I'm going to kick it off to you by stopping the share.
Great, and I will pick up the share from there. And now I just have to find the right screen, of course. I have a brand new computer, so it seems like every time I go to find something, it's a brand new day. Here we go. Now let's try sharing the screen. There it is. Hi, I'm Michelle Kopp from the Podcast Academy, and I am just going to walk you through some very quick slides. We are an organization that is dedicated to really celebrating excellence in podcasting. We do it through classes, through awards, and through a lot of networking. Very excited to announce that we have our Board of Governors. The new group starts on May 1st. There are 19, but these were the 8 people who were just elected. A few of them are returning to the board. And as you can see, it's a really fantastic group. So we hope you will come think about joining us as well. We have community building in all of these different ways, including Slack, the mentorship program that I mentioned, and a lot of master classes just like these. In fact, on May 18th, you should come back. We'll be talking to Dolby again about yet another DAWs. Here are some of our upcoming events, including the New Member Monday, and we're doing a number of events in person. So if you're in New York or if you're in Dallas, we have a lot of upcoming in-person, just easy networking events. You just show up and get to know other people. All right, I don't want to take any more time from what we're really here for. You don't really want to talk to me, but you do want to talk to Tom and Greg all about this next DAWs. So we're going to turn things over to them. And just a reminder, put those questions in the Q&A box, not the chat box, so we can be sure to find them.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Anna, so much for including us today. And Anna, I love that painting behind you. It's really stinking cool. So my name is Tom McAndrew. I'm on the content relations team for Dolby Labs in the Burbank, California office. And Greg and I are here to talk about Dolby Atmos for podcasting. So Atmos has been around for over 10 years. We started in feature films and then home entertainment on Shiny Disc and then streaming originals like on Netflix and Disney Plus and lots of other services. And then Dolby Atmos music. There's literally tens of thousands of songs that have either originated or been remixed into Dolby Atmos on Apple Music, Amazon Music HD, and Tidal. And now here we are with podcasting. And so a couple of services have already lit up Dolby Atmos capability. Several months ago, Wondery Plus was first to the party here in the US, and lots of their original podcast series feature Dolby Atmos. And just about a month or so, Audible joined the party. And so now Audible is a major worldwide service with I think like 40 or 50 now audiobooks, as well as like meditation content and sleep content, also available on their service in Dolby Atmos. And so it's a really exciting time for us at Dolby to be welcomed into the podcast community. And we're doing lots of outreach with events like this, in-person events, like we're going to be at the podcast show in London in a month, also podcast movement in Denver at the end of August. And so if you go to any of those in-person events, by all means, come visit us. So podcasting in Dolby Atmos. So the first question you may think of is why? Because when some people think podcasts, they think about two drunk guys sharing a microphone in a garage. That's not really the kind of podcast we're generally talking about. Although if somebody wants to mix something like that in Dolby Atmos, so hey, by all means. But the kind of podcasts that are really made for Atmos, we're talking about like narrative fiction podcasts and sci-fi and true crime and nature documentaries and music podcasts. There are lots of different types of podcasts that have really great production value that can be enhanced by the immersiveness of Dolby Atmos. So I kind of wanted to set the stage with all that, just talk about what is Atmos and where we are in the ecosystem right now. And right now we're here specifically to talk about, we're already in several digital audio workstations, and we're having different events with BlackPod to talk about how the different DAWs work. But today is LogicPro Day, and our expert with Apple LogicPro is Greg Barbone, who is going to take over. So Greg is going to do a demonstration of Dolby Atmos mixing in Apple LogicPro. And like Anna and Michelle said, if you have questions along the way, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and we'll either do Q&A at the end, or maybe if there's something specific to what Greg's talking about and a question pops up that's appropriate, I'll jump in and say, hey, Greg, so-and-so wants to ask this question. And we're, hey, we're open and casual. So I look forward to questions in the Q&A. And Greg, please take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. And thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Ona. So very happy to be here. Thanks for having me. My name is Greg, and I work for Dolby. I'm the product manager for the Dolby Atmos storage SIDK, which is essentially the core piece of technology that makes all the Dolby Atmos content work. And that technology is built into all the different digital audio workstations, and specifically LogicPro, which we're here to talk about. So let me get my screen shared here, and then we can get going. So just a moment, share my screen, and here we go. Great. So here we are in LogicPro. I brought in some basic content just to get us started, but the first thing I wanted to address before we got into absolutely anything is that if you download LogicPro from the Apple App Store, the first thing that you're going to need to do in order to start working with Dolby Atmos is enable the features that come with that come with LogicPro. So all this is located in settings. And if you go to the advanced settings here, you're going to find that there's this first little checkbox here in settings, advanced settings, enable complete features. If you don't have this checked, you won't be able to get your session into Dolby Atmos mode. So that is first and foremost. But once you have that, Apple Logic makes it super, super easy to take any session that you might have had, or any session that you're starting from scratch, and turn it into something that you can work with Dolby Atmos. So first thing that you need to do to get that going is go in. Well, first you'll create a project, and this will be the same for any project. You can go new from template, however you like, but even just a new blank project will work. But the first thing that you need to do is you need to go to project settings, and you need to go to audio. And in audio here, this is where it'll show you a few different settings. So sample rate and spatial audio. These are the two that we need to worry about. So you have to make sure this is set to either 48 or 96, and then turn spatial audio to Dolby Atmos. And once you do that, and this is with any session that you already have. If you've used Logic before, this is all you have to do, and you're ready to go. So from there, we're ready to get going. But before I do that, I just want to maybe get a couple pieces of terminology clear. So when we think about surround sound, or spatial audio in general, there's a concept that is very important to understand. It's this concept of beds versus objects. Dolby Atmos is unique because it is an object-based format. That means each of the sources that you're working with can be virtual objects. And this is really great and really powerful because it allows our system to basically scale to any type of playback system that you might be listening to it on. It could be in a home theater, it could be on a sound bar, it could be on a pair of headphones, it could be in a movie theater, it could be in your car. And these objects allow you to do really, really great things and give you better fidelity, better definition, and also really customize your mix for the place that's being played back. So, but the Dolby Atmos format gives you basically the access to 118 objects. Now, you might have a podcast or a session that has more than 118 objects. So that's why we give you this other feature called beds. And beds is basically like it's like an aggregate of where you can put these things that maybe that aren't an object, but they still remain spatial. So this is an important thing to know about, because this is what we'll have to configure this in Logic Pro. So basically, once you set up the session and you've turned it into spatial audio, everything is being routed to this bed. And that's great. Everything is going to be in surround. And you see here, I've got a bunch of different tracks, and these are the different panners on the tracks. So if I double click this, it'll show me that I can move the sound source through the space. And you can see the representation of all the different speakers, that are there as a part of like this bed. So again, that bed concept is like sort of multi-channels. You're sort of mixing for a group of speakers as opposed to, just placing an object in space. But when we basically right-click on any of these panners, we have the ability to turn it into a 3D object panner. And once we do that, then we're in object mode, and we're panning in space. So really, if you can, this is the mode that you want to be working in, because it's going to give you the most flexibility and the best resolution. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to open up another plugin here to basically stream this session to you, because Logic Pro and Zoom don't really work so well together. So I'm just going to open up this plugin called Audio Movers. And this is going to create a streaming link, and I'm going to put it in the chat. And if you just click that link and you open it up in your web browser, you'll be able to hear the output coming out of my session. So apologies if you're watching this as a recording. It may or may not be synchronized, but don't worry, I'll be explaining it as we go. So I'm just going to copy this link here, and I'm going to put it in the chat. Let's see, chat.
And while Greg's doing that, I'll take a brief aside. He mentioned the concept of beds and objects in Dolby Atmos mix. I'll go a little bit deeper into that. Like Greg said, beds are kind of the aggregate channel-based part of the mix, actually sound mixed to speaker channels, like we've been doing for a century. So every bed track is assigned to a speaker channel, and the beds are 9.1 wide. So traditional home theater 7.1, and then stereo overhead. So left total overhead and right total overhead. So that's beds. And then objects, and you can have, like he said, up to 118 simultaneous objects at once. There are opportunity for 118 object tracks. Not to say you have a grand total of 118 objects, but you have that many tracks available. objects are kind of the special sauce of Dolby Atmos, because instead of being mixed speaker channels, they're mixed like you see in the panner there with positional metadata. So X, Y, and Z coordinates in space. So audio objects, that the object metadata travels with the mix to the playback environment, because every playback environment is different, whether it's a car with Dolby Atmos or a living room or a cinema or a mobile device with headphones. Every playback environment is different in terms of number of speakers and location of speakers. And the object metadata is used to steer the objects so that they don't always come out the same speaker channel. They always come out the correct point in the space. That's kind of the magic and the special sauce of object-based audio and Dolby Atmos specifically. So thank you for that brief aside. Greg, take away.
Yeah, cool. All right, so I'm just going to play some audio, and Tom, maybe you can just let me know if you hear this in your browser, or anybody else that's on the call, and I can move it from there. So when you get that link, there'll be a button that says start listening. And if you have that, hopefully you're hearing what I've just been playing there. Can you guys hear that?
I am hearing it, Greg.
Great. Awesome. Fantastic. All right. So we are live. Great. Cool. All right. So basically what I've done here is I've just put a couple tracks together. This is just a basic, what you might consider like an introduction to a podcast here, and we can use this as an example, and we can record some additional audio here. But yeah, so as it's going, I have the ability to turn all these tracks into 3D object panners, and these are going to let me, pan things around. So I'll take the vocal track here, turn this into a 3D object panner, and maybe we can listen to see how this works. I can, if you hit C, by the way, in Logic, it'll turn it into into this cycle playback, and it's nice if you want to just like loop a section over and over. But yeah, so I can solo this here, and if I double click this, you'll hear all the audio kind of moving around. And you can use this for the elevation up and down. And if you want to see what's happening, you basically you can hit here on the master track. There's this Atmos plugin that's created when you turn the channel into, when you convert the session to Dolby Atmos. And this is a representation of your room. And those balls there, those are a representation of the sound objects that are being played back. So this is a really cool way of sort of visualizing the panning as it's moving around your head. So the cool thing is we can go here and we can basically create a mix and do a bunch of different things here. So if I wanted to create, if I wanted to put maybe these drums and I wanted to put them in, give them a sense of space, Logic has a really cool reverb built in that's built for spatial audio. So if I click here, this is on the bus, and if I create a send, I'll create a send to bus 1. And from there, I will send to that bus. I'll put on the bus, I'll throw on the plugin here. It's called the Space Designer. And this basically takes the stereo input from my track and turns it into a 7.1.2 output to the bed. And this allows me to put that in there. So I don't know if you should probably hear that that's going into space. It's pretty cool. So you can really start to build these sound stages. So I'll take the pad, I can put it over here. You can do a bunch of really cool things and really start to build this soundscape up. So while we're here, I want to show you a couple things within the renderer. You have a couple different monitoring formats here. So this is important to know about. So Dolby Atmos, as we mentioned, you can mix on headphones, or you could experience it on headphones. It's going to recreate what this environment sounds like on a pair of headphones. But you can also listen to it on a multi-channel speaker system if you have it in your room. So all the big professional music studios have at least 7.1.4 or 5.1.4 loudspeaker layouts. Some of them are even bigger for cinema. And this allows you to actually be in the room and hear what it's supposed to sound like. But we also give you this ability to listen to that binaural render within the software. And if you notice here, there's a few different options. There's the Dolby renderer, which is what we use in all of our professional tools. But you also have the option here. Let me turn down that reverb just a bit. You also have the option to listen to the Apple renderer. And what this is, it's a slightly different way of actually reproducing the sound that the Dolby Atmos mix will create. And this is what you hear on, which you would be listening to if you were to distribute your music on Apple Music. So Logic is really nice that they give you the option to listen to the Dolby version and the Apple renderer version. They also have the ability, if you're using an M1 computer, with Apple headphones like the AirPod Maxes or the AirPod Pros, you can actually do head tracking with those headphones. And as you move your head around, it will make it sound like you were in a room with loudspeakers. And if you have an object panned right in front of you, as you move your head, it will still sound like it's right there. And this is a feature that that consumers can listen to as well if they're using Apple headphones when it's being distributed.
And I'll just briefly chime in that we're talking about the different listening modes and speaker counts and so forth. So if people are mixing sound for picture, like feature films, streaming originals, specifically sound for picture, it's actually a requirement by a lot of the services that you're mixing in a minimum of 7.1.4 speaker environment. For podcasting, we totally recognize that, budgets are different, timelines are different, and mixing podcasts binaurally on headphones using either the Apple binaural renderer or the Dolby renderer is an absolutely valid way of working, and people get great results from mixing podcasts that way. And we're talking about the Apple renderer and playing on iOS devices. That is a specific implementation for Apple mobile devices. The general Dolby renderer is what you're going to hear, what you're going to monitor with if you expect to be playing back like over speakers in a living room environment or on Android handsets and other types of devices. But Apple, they always put in their special sauce. And so that's why the Apple rendering is specific to iOS devices.
Awesome.
And,
thanks.
I'll shut
Thanks,
up
Tom.
again. Sure.
No. Thank you. That's super valuable. I really appreciate that.
Sure thing.
Yeah. So, and then another thing that's really interesting when we're thinking about listening on headphones, we have this capability of adding what we call binaural render mode. So binaural, again, this is this concept of virtualizing the surround sound signal that we're getting from all the objects that we're going to loudspeakers and putting it on our headphones. But we found that when we were developing Atmos, that when we took the soundstage that we mixed on speakers and we were listening back on headphones, it didn't have the same sense of depth. And we knew that headphones was a really important and valid way of distributing Atmos files. So what we did was we added this extra piece of technology called binaural render modes, which allows you to set a value for every object that you have. And it basically goes from near, mid, or far, or off. And this will simulate a sense of distance for the objects. So it allows you to create like a really, really immersive headphone mix that you might not get if you were to just fold down from the loudspeaker mix. So this is really valuable metadata that you can assign to your different objects, and it's definitely a really great part of the creative process. So yeah. So the idea here is that you go through your process of mixing. You want to put all your objects in different places as you like. You want to take advantage of the entire sound space. I mean, I've got a sound here, which I think is cool, of like basically creating ambience. I mean, I've got some rain here. Let's see if I can get this going. Let me need this. Whoop. Uh-oh, what's going on here? Let me try to get this going. And what's happening? Oh, my track is off. Here we go. Okay. So I've got some rain here, and I'll turn this into my 3D object banner. I can double click on this, and I can use the elevation knob to raise it up. And as you hear that, it sounds like it's going up over your head. And we can take this and we can move it closer to you, move it back. And you could really do some amazing stuff here with like setting, building sound stages, which is why it's such it's an amazing tool to tell stories. You can create these ambiances, you can create these different environments. You can place different speakers in different places, like voices can come behind you. They could be wherever. So it's a very, very powerful way of working. And the other thing that you could do too is that you can automate all these different things. So if you wanted to make it sound like somebody was walking across the soundstage from left to right, we could also do that. So I can even I could record something quickly, and maybe I can show you how that automation works. So I'll just hit record here and hit power. Whoop. This around. This is what it would sound like if I was talking and you wanted to move me around the soundstage from left to right and around you. I'm just creating this audio, recording it, and then we're gonna add some automation when we're done. So that's it. I've recorded that. And basically all you have to do here is put your track into touch mode. So down here on the mixer, if you ever lose the mixer, you can always hit X. If you hit that above the, first of all, I'll turn this into a 3D object track. And then there's this button here, it says automation. And if you turn this to touch, basically as you're playing anything that you record in the plugin, any mouse movements that you do are going to create the automation, and it's going to record that. So I'll just hit play. Oh, sorry, that's the rain. Let me get back to my. Yeah, this is my voice. So there it is. And then if I go back in and play that back again. So super, super, super easy to basically do automations and things like that.
Greg, I was going to mention, if you don't mind,
Sure.
This is a good opportunity to talk about just the creative possibilities of using Dolby Atmos 3-dimensional audio to set a mood. You mentioned a soundstage, and the cool thing about the podcast medium in general is that it's completely the theater of the mind, and you can set the soundstage to be wherever it is, and you can put the listeners wherever you want them to be. And one mixer I've worked with a lot uses a great example that I've used in other webinars, where it's like you can kind of create the audio vocabulary with Dolby Atmos for the podcast. For example, in a true crime podcast, he's like, okay, we're going to have one scene in the podcast where the interviewer is interviewing the police detective to talk about what happened. And in there, maybe you are the audience and you're sitting out, in like a theater style audience, and everything is happening in front of you. The interviewer and the detective are up on a stage, if you will. But then there's a flashback scene to like the crime scene recreation. And now suddenly you're the protagonist. And instead of being in the audience, you're in the middle and everything is happening all around you. So, the possibilities of what you can do with 3-dimensional audio are unlimited. And as a podcast creator, it's really important to think about creatively, where do I want the audience to be? And then that kind of dictates, okay, then where do I put the sounds as a result? Do you want the audience to be, again, in the back with everything happening in front of you? Do you want things to be happening to the listener, so everything's happening all around them? There's lots of creative potentials, and I thought of that while you were moving your voice around. Hey, creatively, what do you want to do with the sounds? So you're way better than me at talking about how to do it with LogicPro, but I just kind of wanted to talk about the big sky stuff.
No, of course it's true, and it's really limitless. And like what I really love about Logic is that it's so easy to use, like right out of the box. With some of the other solutions with Dolby Atmos, while they offer really, really flexible workflows for big, movie productions and things like that, Logic just makes it really easy for you to get up and running with it. So yeah, so essentially the possibilities are truly endless. I mean, for what you can do. So I guess I'll touch on just a couple more things, and then we can hopefully, maybe dig into some questions, because yeah, I think that would be a great way to do it. But basically, I just wanted to tell you that once you end up, creating your creation, your podcast, there's a couple steps that you basically need to do to just get it out of Logic Pro. So first thing you might want to do, if you're distributing your podcast to a service, a lot of times that they have technical requirements on the way the files are going to be delivered. And sometimes there's this concept of loudness and how loud is the podcast. And they want you to hit this target of loudness. So Logic makes it easy to do that by having a loudness meter, built into the software. So this is a great way for you to just measure the loudness of your content. So basically, all you do is you just have to play it and hit start. And what it's doing is it's measuring integrated loudness. That basically means like loudness over time. It's taking like an average measurement of how loud this thing of your content is. And that's directly related to what your service is going to want. Usually it's around, I think it's -20 for podcasts. The music is a little bit different, where they ask for a different requirement. But this is how you get that measurement. And here it's telling my integrated loudness is -21.7. I think that's more or less in the ballpark. But you can go in and tweak your settings with all your different faders to basically get it into range.
Yeah,
so
and the studios that are, oh, sorry, Greg.
No, please go ahead.
Studios that are receiving Dolby Atmos master files, they will actually have a spec saying, hey, your average dialogue loudness needs to be this, and then your peak loudness should not exceed that. And so, yeah, look for those deliverables requirements for who you're delivering to, and they'll keep you on the straight and narrow. And I'll briefly mention also there's another tool, and we're not trying to sell you tools, but there's another Dolby tool called the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler. It was really invented for music workflows. However, it's got a great feature where you can load a file, like a Dolby Atmos master file, and then do either a real-time or a file-based loudness analysis. And that will tell you what your average and peak loudnesses are. And then there's a master gain control where you can actually tweak them if you're out of the pocket. You can tweak your settings there versus going back and remixing the whole thing. So again, not trying to sell you tools, but it's called the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler, DAAA, and it's $100.
Cool. Awesome, Tom. Thanks for that. Yeah, and again, like, as deep as you want to go into this, there might be other tools that'll solve your needs. But Logic generally has pretty much most everything that you need just straight out of the box, which is really cool. Yeah. So now you want to deliver it, and you want to send it to your studio, and perhaps you might want to send a file to maybe your producer who wants to preview it or something like that. So we have a couple ways of doing that. So if we want to export our session to make a Dolby Atmos master file, it's in this form called ADM B-Wave, which is just a multi-channel wave file, high resolution, but that has the Dolby specific metadata in it. So for example, when I panned my voice around, all that information gets written into the master file. And that way, when it gets encoded and played back on a system, all that automation is going to be retained. But it's pretty easy to do. So if you want to make the master file, we just go down here to export, and we'll export either export project as an ADM BWF, or you can make a selection and do the same thing there, and you can export the selection as an ADM BWF, and that just will make you a WAV file, and that's what you send for to your service for distribution. If you wanted to send something to your producer or your friend to take a listen to, we use a different format for that in Logic Pro, and we use what's called that binaural mix. So basically, we're going to take a mix of what you're hearing in your headphones, and we're going to be able to create a file out of that. So in order to do that, you just go back to your Atmos plugin here, and you're going to make sure that you're set to like the Dolby or the Apple renderer here. And then you're going to go to File, Bounce, and then you'll bounce either the project or the section. And what you're going to do here is PCM is just like a stereo wave file. You could do that there, and then just click Surround Bounce, and okay. And that's all you need to do in order to make that happen. We don't usually want normalized. That's not something that you'll typically do. But yeah, so you basically just hit OK, and it'll either do a real time or an offline bounce, which real time means it'll play through the whole thing, or offline, especially if you've got a podcast that's an hour long, you might want to just do it offline and it'll do it faster than real time. So that's the way you want to do it there. And you just hit OK, and that's it. And it will bounce your file. So those are the two ways that you can listen in and create masters in Logic Pro. There is yet another way of creating a Dolby Atmos master, but it's not included in Logic Pro. But it's built into some of the Dolby Atmos software, the Dolby Atmos renderer, and that's creating an MP4 file. And that would be a type of file that you could then load into your you could stream to your Apple TV, and that would play on a sound bar, and you could hear what the mix is going to sound like on a surround sound system. Logic Pro doesn't have that feature, but if that's something that you're interested in, you can purchase the Dolby Atmos renderer, and that functionality is there. So essentially what you would do is you would just take that master file, that ADM master file that you've created, load it into the renderer, and then export the master file out of the renderer as an MP4.
And I will say also, if you just want to fiddle with that feature prior to buying the renderer, or even if you decide not to buy the renderer, we do offer a free 3-month demo of the Dolby Atmos renderer application. It's if you go to professional.dolby.com and then navigate to the Dolby Atmos renderer, again, you can sign up for that free 3-month demo and play with it. And yeah, Greg, I'm glad you mentioned that feature, because that's one of my favorite features of the renderer is the export to MP4. Like you said, it encodes it to Dolby Digital Plus. It wraps it in an MP4 container. And if it's sound for picture, you can choose to add a video file as well. And like you said, then you can take that file and the way I usually do it is you put it on a thumb drive, then you stick it in a Blu-ray player or a smart TV that has a Dolby Atmos soundbar or home theater system hooked up to it, and then you can hear your encoded file right away. So it's kind of the new tech equivalent of I'm showing my age now. When we finished mixing a song, we'd run it off to cassette and then run out to the driveway and stick it in the car cassette player and listen to it right away in a consumer environment. So this is kind of the new school way of doing that.
Yeah, for sure. And just note, if that sounds like a little cumbersome, I mean, we are currently working on making this whole process a lot easier and a lot more streamlined. But certainly today, I mean, Logic gives you a really powerful way of working, and just exporting that as a binaural mix is a great way of just like shooting it off and for review and approval. It's really easy over headphones.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing about binaural. It's a great way to monitor and listen professionally when you're making a mix. It's a great way to share files for creative review for your colleagues. Some podcasts are actually using Dolby Atmos rendering tools and distributing on podcast services binaurally. They do an Atmos mix, and then they squish it down to binaural, which it's 2 channels, and the podcast service doesn't know it's binaural versus stereo, but that's how they distribute. Putting on my Dolby hat, that's something we do not recommend. We can't stop anyone from doing it, but we don't recommend it, because the thing is, binaural is great for headphones, but it's only great for headphones. And people do listen to podcasts in the car, in the living room, and lots of different other places, on smart speakers, etc. So a binaural mix, when you play it out over speakers, the thing that makes it binaural, phase and EQ and delay and so forth, that creates the illusion in your brain that things are happening outside the 2 channels, it can kind of break the quality of the mix in a speaker environment. So I will say that there's absolutely the capability to create binaural files from a Dolby Atmos mix, and it's great for doing creative reviews strictly on headphones. But for what it's worth, Dolby does not recommend that as an actual end distribution format. Selfishly, we want to release and stream Dolby Atmos, and right now you can do that with Wondery Plus and Audible and other services around the world, and more services to come that haven't announced yet. But binaural, it's a great means to a particular end, but we don't recommend it as a end-all be-all way of distributing. So Dolby commercial over.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's the true benefit of the format. It's that if you're working in our format and you're playing within our ecosystem, it's going to give you the best experience no matter where you're listening to it. So if you are listening on headphones, you're going to get the binaural. If you're listening in a car that's Dolby Atmos enabled, it's going to be rendering for loudspeakers, optimized for that environment. In your home theater, in a cinema, wherever you're listening, you're going to get the best possible experience, and it's going to be true to the way that you created it in the studio. So I think that's generally it from me. I mean, we could certainly go super deep into to more technical stuff, and happy to do that. But I figured we just, yeah, let's start there and see.
All right. So Taisha asks, going back to the beginning of the presentation, I couldn't write it down fast enough. Where do you go to turn on Dolby Atmos in Logic Pro? So right from the very beginning.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it again, because this is the important thing. So basically, remember, if you've just downloaded Logic Pro from the Apple Store, you need to go to Logic Pro Settings, Advanced, and you need to enable complete features. If this is not enabled, then you won't see the Atmos option. So that's first and foremost. So enable complete features. And of course, you guys are all, professional podcast creators. So that's what you're going to want to do anyways, because you want to take advantage of everything that Logic has to offer. So that's number one. Number two is when you create a new a new project. I can just create a new one. Let's do it. Let's create a new one from scratch. And this will close out the audio link, but I think we're probably good for now. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to close it. I'll save it. And let's start from scratch. Come on, MacBook, let's go. Let's see. Waiting. Oh, okay, great. All right, so here we are. So we're going to create it. We're going to create a new session from scratch. I'm going to create, let's say we'll just create four blank audio tracks. So we create that. Here we are. Now we want to mix in Atmos. Very simple. We go this time to project settings because we're enabling Dolby Atmos for our projects. And then we go to audio. And we're going to make sure we're at sample rate 48K, and we're going to turn on Dolby Atmos. Now, you do have the option to work in other sample rates like 96K. And this is basically just a higher resolution. Logic doesn't have the ability to export this yet, but if you really want to keep your project in a super high fidelity, you can work in 96K. It'll just export it in 48K. So basically, once you've got that, you're ready to go. But just remember now that once you're in this mode, all of the tracks are going to beds. And what you want to do is you'll pick a track where you can hit X for your mixer, and that'll pop that up. You're going to right click on these panners and it'll turn it into a 3D object panner. And then that turns it into an object. And that's going to give you all the super spatial resolution that we were talking about earlier. So hopefully that answers your question.
Let's see. Felipe put in the chat that he has some songs on Apple Music, all mixed in Dolby Atmos, and there's a direct link to them. So if you have an Atmos listening environment, by all means, check that out. And thank you, Felipe. I will definitely listen to those. Awesome. Let's see. And he also asks how to play in a soundbar. Does Bluetooth work for that? No, Bluetooth, I believe, can only transmit stereo. So it's, when we talked about creating, doing the export to MP4 function and putting it in a thumb drive, then you would use the USB input either on a smart TV or say a Blu-ray player. And then you play the file that way, and then over HDMI, it would arrive at the soundbar. So that is the answer to that question. And then another attendee, Anonymous, said, I didn't get how to export an MP4. Again, that is a specific feature of Dolby's renderer application. So again, we're not trying to sell them, but if you want that feature, it's $300 on the Avid store. But you can also go to professional.dolby.com and get a free 3-month demo. And then once you have an Atmos master file loaded into the renderer, you select export to MP4. Oh, Greg's opening the renderer.
Yeah, I can show you that real quick. It's really straightforward and easy once you have it. So you basically create your Atmos master file in Logic. You would export it, as we mentioned, export your project as an ADM BWF file, and then you would load that into the renderer. You would basically say open. And you would open up a master file. Open a master file here. And then once you have that master file loaded, you're going to go to, let's see, you're going to export audio and just hit .mp4, and that's going to export that master file for you as an MP4. So yeah, and hopefully that answers that question. Yeah, we'd like to see it in Logic. Hopefully, that happens at some point. But for now, there's definitely ways to make that functionality work.
Yep. And Anna asked about the renderer, the $300 that I referred to for the Dolby Atmos renderer that Greg just showed. That is a one-time cost. It's not an annual subscription.
And remember, of course, there's the trial as well. So if you're in a pinch and need to just check it out, just get the trial and you can. And
we're talking about Logic Pro today, but if you are a registered Pro Tools user, I believe that if you log in with your Pro Tools credentials on the Avid store, I believe they are currently offering a discount. So it's not the full $300 cost. Let's see. I am not seeing other questions. If anyone has any quick questions to throw in the Q&A, let me look down the messages. Yep. Yeah, Greg mentioned iMix for UMG, Universal Music Group, etc., and they require both a speaker environment and binaural headphones. Correct. Every distributor is different in terms of their not only their deliverable requirements, but their mixing environment requirements. And yeah, UMG is an example where they say, hey, you need to mix on you need to mix on speakers because we want the music to go everywhere.
Yeah, it's definitely preferred if you can monitor on both. But the reality is that not everybody has that capability at home, and the binaural renderer that's built into Logic is a really powerful tool to let you just get working right away. And the other cool thing is you could take it with you on the road. I mean, you could be if you're doing remote podcasts and you're going out and you're getting footage from the field, you could just load that stuff up into your laptop and mix in in your hotel room and get a really great mix. And if you then want to take it back to the studio and then check it out on the loudspeakers, that's like a great way to do it. But Logic just makes it so easy for you to create this content wherever you are.
Indeed. Let's see. Ike said, I've noticed some podcast studios say they're Dolby Atmos certified. How do we get certified? In the very early days of Atmos Sound for Picture, we did do studio certifications. And then we got a very good problem, which was that there were too many studios that were Dolby Atmos capable. And simply put, we couldn't go everywhere to do certifications. So we no longer are certifying studios. Again, that was a legacy program several years ago that we discontinued just because of the preponderance of great Dolby Atmos studios around the world. And Michelle put in the chat, special offer from the Podcast Academy, 50% off membership with that Partner 23 code. That's great to note. Felipe asks, do you think it is possible to mix in Atmos within Logic to release for streaming platforms using just the AirPods Pro Max? It's absolutely possible. Again, it depends on the requirements of the streaming service that you're delivering to. But yeah, I've heard amazing mixes that were done 100% on headphones. One of the podcast streaming services, some of their mixers had only heard their own mixes on headphones. And we had a Dolby Atmos event day where we went to their office and we brought a home theater system and we set it up. And one of the mixers very casually said, oh yeah, this is the first time I'm going to hear my mix on speakers. And I went, oh God. And he heard it and was actually very, very pleased with the mix. So yeah, in a lot of circumstances, we've seen the experience translates really, really well.
Awesome. Oh, and then the other thing which is really great about if you are listening on Apple headphones, as I mentioned before, if you check the Atmos plugin again, you have the ability to listen using the Apple renderer using head tracking, which is really cool. And just keep in mind that you have to be using the head tracking enabled headphones from Apple, like the AirPod Maxes and Apple AirPod Pros, and you have to have an Apple Silicon computer in order to get that. But if you have that, and if you've also created this personalized spatial audio profile within iOS, that'll allow you to apply that as well. Dolby has our own technology, which we call PHRTF, or personalized HRTF, And this is
Related transfer function.
yes, exactly. And this is available in the other Dolby tools. It hasn't made its way to Logic yet, but it's another way of optimizing your headphone experience for you personally, because we found that everybody's anatomy is just a little bit different, and the way that we perceive sound is affected by that. So these technologies from Dolby and from Apple can really help that, especially if you're mixing only on headphones.
Right. I think that's just, here we go. Yeah, Greg says you don't need to be certified for TV or music, but best practices, it's best to know the requirements, of course. Just adding speakers is not getting room tuning right. Yeah, that's a great point. And in fact, also at professional.dolby.com, if you really do want to set up a speaker environment, we have a Dolby Atmos. We have two things that you can download. Our Dolby Atmos room design guide, which talks about just everything to set up a proper near field Atmos mix room, you know, minimum and maximum recommended room volumes, distances and angles to each speaker location. And you know, everything you need to create you know, a good Dolby Atmos and mixing environment. We also have our DART spreadsheet. We stink at acronyms. Dolby Atmos Room Design Tool, DART, and it's an interactive spreadsheet where you put in your proposed speakers and amplifiers and distances to all the speakers. And in terms of actual room SPLs, the spreadsheet based on your inputs will give you kind of a green light, yellow light, red light if what you're proposing for your room is beefy enough. So again, our Dolby Atmos Room Design Guide document and the DART spreadsheet, those are all free and available to download from professional.dolby.com.
Awesome.
Right.
I guess if I could just, you know, sort of just sum it up, I think this format and this technology really, it offers tremendous potential. I mean, it really just changes the canvas that you're working with, and it allows you to tell stories in a much more immersive and visceral way. And the best way to do it is just to dig in and get started and experiment. And there are no wrong answers. Yeah, there's a lot of technical details that go in, you know, sometimes go into getting like the room set up right, and you know, like the deliverable specs, all that stuff. You can get there, but really, Logic is so powerful. It makes this technology so accessible. Just dig in, enable those settings, and experiment and see what you create, because it's just fun. It's amazing, and it's a really powerful tool for storytelling, especially as Tom mentioned, with changing perspectives and being able to just create some incredible, you know, auditory experiences. So
yeah, the really fun thing about all this is the podcast community was actually ahead of Dolby in all this. I was doing my sound for picture job, and I was on the Dolby professional forums on Facebook, Dolby Mixers group, and Dolby Atmos film and TV mixers and Dolby Atmos music mixers. They're great communities on Facebook for professionals to talk to each other and get tips and hints and everything. But I went on there a couple of years ago, and I started seeing all this chatter about podcasters like, hey, have you checked out the Dolby Atmos renderer? I'm mixing my podcast with it. And I'm like, oh God, we're behind. And so podcasters actually started using the Dolby Atmos tools even before we came to the party. And seeing what people are doing with Dolby Atmos in the podcast space has really been fascinating and fun. And you know, we thank everybody for their support, their participation, and their enthusiasm. And we're here for you. My email address is tom.mcandrew.dolby.com. Shoot me a message, shoot me a question. We're absolutely here for y'all. And I think we're getting close to the end of our time, but thank you all so much for attending and listening in. And Greg, thank you for giving us the deep dive on Logic Pro. And this is fun. I hope everybody got some value out of it. I guess say the email again, tom.mcandrew, McAndrew @dolby.com.
awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Greg and Tom, for all that great information. My head is about to explode. I will just like to remind everyone that we are doing an exit survey. So I went ahead and put that in the chat. All of these videos, the first in the DAWs series, the second and the third, which is upcoming on May 18th, will all be on the TPA YouTube channel. So you can go there, refer your friends there, and enjoy. All right. Any parting words, Anna?
Well, just thank you guys so much. This was very informative, and it made me realize that when I was using it, I definitely was not using not even half of the tools that were in here. So really do appreciate it. Thank you everyone for attending. Been loving all the chats, so make sure you guys connect with each other. Feel free to send the video in YouTube to somebody else that you feel like would find this beneficial.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Thanks, guys,
All
for having
right.
me.
Thanks, everybody.
We look forward to seeing you all to talk DAWs again on May 18th. Have a great night.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Thanks.